A resilient person is someone that can keep having those moments, recognize that they're having those moments and saying, I'm having this moment. This moment is not my life. This moment is not everything. This moment does not dictate that I'm going to be a bad author or that my books are not going to sell or I'm just wasting my time and my money and trying to do this thing that I'm really passionate about. You're listening to Writer Unblocked, a podcast for aspiring and experienced authors. I'm your host and author coach, Nicole, and on this show, we chat with up-and-coming as well as best-selling authors, literary agents, and publishing professionals to inspire you and keep the vibe high. Hey, welcome to the solo episode of the week here at Writer Unblocked. I'm your host, Nicole Op Den Bosch, and if you're new here, I talk a lot about writing, author struggles, publishing, audiobook life, all kinds of things that are related to the author career and the publishing industry. Today, I really want to talk about author resilience. And this is a topic that you see a lot in the self-help world, and we hear the word resilience a lot. And it's very easy to say, oh, okay, I've been through something. I'm going to be resilient. I'm going to snap out of it. I'm going to come out stronger on the other side. And everything is great after that. What I want this episode to convey to you is that resilience is this super ongoing, forever journey. I can share a little bit about my experience, not as an author, of course, but as someone who is building and has been building a business. I want to help authors. I want to be someone who helps you strategize how to get to your publishing and writing goals. I have an extensive career in the industry. I have a certification in coaching. I'm often very much sought after by authors, known and unknown, friends, colleagues, ex-colleagues, precisely for that coaching energy that it took me years to accept that I have this gift. So I wanted to build a business around this, and it's been hard. And it's hard to pinpoint when this journey started for me because I definitely have documents that I started planning this business pre-2018 for sure. But I would say that the birth of the LLC, for example, is 2020. 2020 is when the pandemic hit, and I took a very intense coaching course. And it was actually for executive coaching. So my idea was to first and foremost coach executives, even though my day job was 100% helping authors navigate their audiobook journey. And I worked for Audible for 13 years. I was out there. I was the face of a lot of programs, and I got to deal one-on-one with so many wonderful authors. I got to see this, Mel Robbins' self-publishing journey, David Goggins self-published through ACX, which I was working at the time. So it was wonderful. And I didn't connect the dots. I was going to, my day job was helping authors, and my coaching was for executive coaching. But over time, as I started coaching clients, career coaching clients in 2021, what ended up happening was that 9 times out of 10, it would come out in our coaching session that my client was either writing a book or had written a book, or there was some authorship situation happening. And it was really like this buried dream. They had this buried dream of writing and publishing or finishing a novel that had been stuck in a closet somewhere. And it wasn't until I was working with my own business coach that I connected those dots. And she said, why aren't you coaching authors? So anyway, I made that pivot. And that's just a little bit of context as how we've arrived at Reignite with Nicole, which is really geared toward helping authors reach whatever their goal may be. I help authors who are in the middle of trying to finish writing, starting to write, and authors who have already published and are trying to expand and really take their author career very, very seriously. Which, by the way, if you are interested in working with me, you can go to www.reignitewithnicole, and you can find out how we can, I offer different ways we can work together. You can also shoot me a note. It's Nicole at reignitewithnicole.com, and we can figure out how we can work together if an author coach is something you are interested in exploring. So anyway, I have spent years trying to build this business, and resilience is something that you have to practice, if not daily, I promise you weekly, monthly. The hump doesn't end. You get over one and then something else comes. And when you're trying to build something, and when you're trying to build a book or a fan base or an extensive author empire, you are going to come across so much self-doubt. It's not a one and done. It's not that you get over it or you go to therapy or you work with a coach and then like the next day you're like, oh, you know what? I'm over all the self-doubt. I'm over all the imposter syndrome. Now you're absolutely ready to tackle everything and nothing's going to go wrong again. It is an emotional roller coaster. And I found that when you're trying to build something, if you just accept that some days you are going to have the energy for it, you're going to be excited, your brain is going to make all the sense in the world. You could see it clearly. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel. You can see how the whole thing is going to take you to where you want to be. You can envision your ideal day as a successful author, whatever that means to you. It's just like these days where everything is just perfect in your heart and you feel it and you feel like you're following the path that you're supposed to be on. I think there has to be a deep acceptance and gentleness with yourself on the opposite days, because they will come and they will continue to come, and there's no magic that will make them not happen. So, for example, I have days where I see it very clearly. I am very excited about what I'm doing. It all makes perfect sense. The doors are opening. The signs are there if you believe in that kind of stuff. And everything just aligns very perfectly. And then there are days where it just makes no sense. There are days where I think all the time that I pour into this business or this path, I could be on a couch somewhere reading a book or going on vacation. And it just feels very dark. And it just feels like, why am I doing this? And does anybody even care? Sometimes nothing really can lift me out of that until I just go through it. Sometimes I get lifted out of there because I'll get a random DM on Instagram, or a client will send me a text message thanking me for our last session or for a recent episode I did, or just something that really resonated with someone. And those messages, those emails, those comments do more to uplift me than anything else. So I want you to think of the one person who will pick up your book, or the one beta reader who gives you good feedback, or the one person who is just impacted by what you do, and lean on that. Lean on that for the days where you just feel, why am I doing this? In fact, when you get anything like that, a message, a really nice comment on an Instagram post or TikTok or whatever platform you're using, I would recommend you screenshot it and you have a folder for yourself where you save this stuff, because it really can be very energizing and uplifting to be validated along the way. And that's why I love coaching, because when you have a coaching session and you're discussing how you're having all these doubts, or how you just don't feel like you're ever going to make it, or how no one's going to read your book, the first thing I'm going to ask you as a coach is, what evidence do you have for that to be true? And I know you're going to say none. You're going to say none. I promise you, you're going to say none. And that coaching conversation is what sort of brings you back to center as well, because you realize that you can consciously recognize that your thoughts are irrational, so to speak, for lack of a better word. They're not true, but you don't have to fight them, and you don't have to fight the bad day, and you don't have to fight the hump. You can just say, oh, I'm having one of those. I recognize that I'm having one of those moments. And there's a lot of value in stillness at that point, because that's not my natural reaction. My natural reaction when I'm overwhelmed or feeling that way and doubting myself is to do more. because I need to prove to myself that it's all going to work and that I'm on the right path and all this stuff. And I get all this anxiety. And so I've practiced now doing nothing in those moments, being kind to myself. I said this earlier, kindness to yourself, gentleness with yourself is the most important thing you can do as a creative. We are our own worst critics. These voices, these critics that live in our head, right? They're at the table with us saying these things that deep down in our heart, we know they're not true, but it's just not, knowing that they're not true is not enough sometimes to get us out of the funkiness. We need to take the time to be very gentle with ourselves on those days, very loving, very kind. I know it's cliche, but what would you say to your best friend if she was saying those things about herself that you're thinking about yourself in that moment? And so if it's taking the day off from doing whatever, if it's pushing deadlines, if it's sitting and reading for pleasure, not for research or for editing, but just reading for pleasure. Or maybe it's not reading at all. Maybe you just don't want anything to do that day or in that moment with anything to do with publishing and writing and being an author. And you have to find the thing that calms your nervous system and makes you come back to that center so that you can once again be re-energized and happy and excited to work on your book or whatever you're working on. To reiterate the point that I'm trying to make, it's that it's not resilience. It's not just once. A resilient person is someone that can keep having those moments, recognize that they're having those moments and saying, I'm having this moment. This moment is not my life. This moment is not everything. This moment does not dictate that I'm going to be a bad author or that my books are not going to sell or that I'm just wasting my time and my money and trying to do this thing that I'm really passionate about. Resilience is accepting that in that moment you're having that feeling, which is very natural, and then you're going to take that as a signal to do something beautiful and kind for yourself. I have started a practice of juicing my own orange juice. I was talking to a coach / advisor about this, and she recommended that I juice my own orange juice. I thought it was the most bizarre thing in the world that she told me to do this. I didn't even own a juicer or a press. I bought one. It arrived, and I cannot tell you what wonders that has done for my nervous system. I don't know about the nutrition part. I'm sure, yes, vitamin C, but the act of getting the oranges, washing them, cutting them in half, the fact that it takes a little bit of extra time for me to juice the orange, put it in the cup, wash the juicer, which doesn't take a long time. It's literally a minute. If you do it right away, it rinses very quickly. Just the intentionality, it's sort of like my body recognizing, oh, I'm doing something nice for you. I'm doing something nice for myself. Here is Nicole taking an extra 5 minutes out of the hustle and bustle and the deadlines and the striving and all the things that have to get done in the packed calendar, taking 5 minutes to make this fresh orange juice and drink it. Because let me tell you, once you go through all that to make the juice, you don't just chug it. Then at that point, you just really enjoy it. You sort of savor it. You drink it slowly. You're like, oh, wow, this tastes so much better than juice from a jug, whatever, right? I don't know what it might be for you. I don't know if it's juicing, but you might want to find that practice. You might want to find that 5-minute intentional thing that grounds you and makes you slow down. It also makes it feel like, oh, I'm doing something for me. For your body to say she's doing something for herself. These things are so important. And when you are trying to push through the hump, push through the bad feelings, push through the imposter syndrome, it's almost like the harder you push, the harder it is to get through it. And the minute you fall back and you take a deep breath, like I am doing right now, because I'm not sure you can tell why I'm recording this episode, but it's because I am having one of those feelings. You will notice that it is so much easier to get through that hump. I'm going to finish recording this episode And I am going to feel, I know it, so much more calm. And if I only get to do one thing today, and I believe I need to get back to one of my author clients, and this is what I'm going to do, then that's the one thing that I'm going to accomplish today. And tomorrow, I may wake up with a burst of energy and finish a couple of landing pages and finish updating my website and finish doing all this stuff. And I'm getting ready to go to the London Book Fair in 2 weeks. Very exciting. Finish packing, finish my schedule, finish making appointments with people that I want to see and talk to. But just take a deep breath and realize how much peace there is in surrendering to those feelings. Notice right now how you feel if you think, next time I feel this way, or if you're feeling this way right now, when you're listening to this right now, notice how it feels to think, I'm just going to let myself feel it. I'm going to go do something else or nothing. I'm going to go do nothing. And I'm going to let myself feel this way. I'm going to let myself just sort of accept that right now I'm having a day where I'm thinking, oh, my book is not going to sell and I'm never going to make money and authors are always going to be starving artists, and all these thoughts that are just not very helpful for the long-term goal that you have set for yourself. And notice how when you stop resisting it, it gets a little bit lighter, just a little bit lighter. It's not immediate. It's not a cure-all. It's not magic, but it just feels a little lighter in your shoulders. It feels a little lighter in your upper back. It feels a little lighter in your heart. And I'm not giving you permission to do this. You're giving yourself permission to do this, right? No one can give you permission to relax. You have to give yourself the permission to say, I'm going to be gentle with myself. And so resilience is not just you get through this one thing that's really hard and then bam. Don't take it from me. Read articles of all these authors who have quote unquote have made it, who are making thousands or millions of dollars on their best-selling authors. I just read an article about this big author who I would think has it made and just lives the happiest life every day. My God, all that struggle, and suddenly you're a bestseller and your book is made into movies and you're just swimming in cash. The problem now is that with fame comes a lot of negativity. And she's struggling with that. And it affects her very, very deeply. She's now having to have those same exact humps that she was having before she made it because it just doesn't stop. And so you have to develop resilience as an author. It develops and it never stops. You have to keep flexing the resilience muscle because you could be making all the money in the world. You could be traditionally published if that's your thing. Your book could be in the front window of every major bookstore, and you are still going to have moments where you're going to feel like an imposter or a fraud, or people didn't like your latest book. And there's a lot of criticism because now we live in this world of constant, social media and constant perceived access to ourselves. People feel entitled to your time. And they scrutinize every action and every word and every post and everything that you're doing. So it just doesn't end. And you have to be prepared. You have to be prepared. You have to have practices like the orange juice thing. You have to have coping mechanisms and gentleness and things that you do when you immediately recognize, oh, I'm having one of those moments. This moment is not me. This moment is not true. This moment is not what's dictating what's going to happen tomorrow or for the rest of my life or what's going to happen with my books. It's just a moment. So I hope this is helpful. If it is, let me know because it is really uplifting to be able to connect on this subject. It is really hard to put yourself out there. In any aspect, whether you're an author or a business owner or just someone who's trying something out for the first time, it's so hard to put yourself out there. There's so much fear of rejection. There's so much fear of being embarrassed or doing it wrong. I've gone through, oh my gosh, is my audio quality good enough for this podcast? Is my video quality going to be good enough for YouTube when I start publishing those? Is my website professional enough? But what are people going to think in my life that don't know me as an don't know me as an author coach and who are suddenly going to realize that that's something that I do that really fulfills me. They're going to make fun of me. This is not how I feel every day, by the way. This is just a moment in time that I'm sharing a very vulnerable, private moment with you. But it's because I really believe that it's a universal feeling for people who put their creativity out there and take a chance. And I also remind myself that anybody who judges me or you for doing what you're doing, putting your book out there, putting your best work in the moment out there, is that they're not doing anything. It's easy for someone who's just not pursuing their passion or living a different life than you to see what you're doing and say, oh, look at what she's doing. Look at what he's doing. That's also part of resilience. You have to accept that not everyone's going to like you, that there are trolls out there, that you can be your biggest troll. You are your biggest troll sometimes. And imagine if every time you had a negative thought about yourself, it appeared as a comment in one of your posts or one of your book reviews. You would be aghast to see that kind of commentary, right? I think that you can be kinder to yourself. And I think that if you develop little coping ways of dealing with it and accept it and even talk about it. I think other authors could benefit from hearing from other authors that they're going through this and that they're having that kind of day. Some people name it. Some people name their alter egos, like their self-critic, inner critic rather. They give that person a name. And that way it's easy to separate yourself from that inner critic's voice. So I hope this helped. Leave me a note. Follow me on Instagram. It's at Reignite with Nicole. I would love to talk more about this topic. Who knows, if I get enough interest, I could have a few guests on to talk about this topic. I think it's really, really important and part of the journey. And I will link some resources in the show notes, and I will take a break next week. Like I said, I'm getting ready to go to the London Book Fair. There's also the Audie's Audiobook Awards on March 4th. But I hope to be back on with my regular Thursday schedule once I am back in mid-March. All right. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for joining me this week. For more information on today's episode, please check out the show notes. Before you go, make sure you subscribe to the podcast to receive new episodes right when they're released. You can subscribe right now in the app you're using to listen. And you can also follow me on Instagram at Reignite with Nicole. Lastly, I do have a quick favor to ask before we go. If you're enjoying the podcast, I hope you'll let me know by leaving a review. Thank you again for joining me in this episode of Writer Unblocked. I'll see you next time.